Do you know what happens when you ignore her? It's not what you think. It's way more powerful than you realize. In fact, the psychology behind this might just blow your mind. Ignoring her might sound counterintuitive, but trust me, it's a game changer. Women respond to being ignored in ways that can actually work in your favor, if you know what you're doing. So, if you've ever been confused or frustrated about how to make her pay attention, this is for you. Today, I'll break down exactly what happens when you use this subtle yet powerful technique, and why the results are so shocking. When you ignore her, everything changes. It's not just about stepping back, it's about triggering a response you might never expect. Ignoring someone goes beyond surface level reactions. It taps into deep psychological patterns, making her think, wonder, and question everything she once assumed about you. The power of being intentionally unavailable is shocking, and today we're diving into why this happens. First, let's understand what happens in her mind when you shift your energy. Women, just like anyone else, value attention. But it's not just about receiving any kind of attention. It's about attention that feels meaningful and, most importantly, earned. When you suddenly pull back and create distance, it's as if the rug has been pulled out from under her. The constant validation she's grown used to vanishes, leaving a void. This void isn't empty, though. It's filled with questions. Why isn't he texting me anymore? Has he moved on? Did I do something wrong? And these questions, as trivial as they may seem, begin to take up real space in her mind. What's even more interesting is how this perceived absence changes her perspective. Humans are inherently drawn to what they feel is slipping away. Scarcity breeds value. When you remove yourself from her orbit, she can no longer take your presence for granted. Think about it. When was the last time you truly appreciated something constant in your life? Whether it's a favorite song, a daily routine, or even a person, it's easy to overlook the familiar. The same happens in relationships. Being around constantly makes you predictable, even mundane. But the moment you're absent, your absence becomes noticeable. And here's where it gets even deeper. By ignoring her, you subtly shift the balance of power. Relationships often revolve around dynamics of attention and effort. When you were chasing her, sending her good morning texts, double texting when she didn't reply, or overanalyzing her behavior, the balance was tilted. She held the upper hand because your actions were a reflection of your desire. But when you stop, everything tilts the other way. Suddenly, she's left with the unsettling realization that she might not have been as important as she thought. This doesn't mean she doesn't care, quite the opposite. Her reaction to being ignored stems from a mix of intrigue and insecurity. Even the most confident person will pause when they feel ignored. It challenges the idea they've formed about their connection with you. When you're no longer readily available, she begins to wonder, did I misread him? Is he really as interested as I thought? This second guessing opens the door to curiosity, and curiosity almost always leads to pursuit. But it's not just her ego that gets affected. Ignoring her can also ignite feelings of nostalgia. She'll start reminiscing about the attention you once gave her. The little things, your jokes, the way you asked about her day, even the tone of your voice, suddenly stand out more. The mind has a funny way of amplifying the past when it's gone. You become larger than life in her memory, a version of you that's not easily forgotten. Now, this isn't just about playing hard to get. It's about creating space and setting boundaries that naturally attract respect and interest. Ignoring her sends a message. I'm not here to chase. I value my time and energy, and I expect the same from anyone in my life. When you pull back, something fascinating happens. She begins to notice your absence in ways you might not anticipate. People often underestimate how much of an impact small actions, or the lack thereof, can have. Ignoring her doesn't just make her notice that you're gone. It creates a powerful contrast. between the effort you used to give and the silence that follows. This contrast becomes the trigger for her thoughts and emotions to shift dramatically. You see, our minds have a way of filling in gaps. When you stop communicating, she has no choice but to create her own narrative. At first, she might shrug it off, thinking, he's just busy. But as the hours and days pass without any sign of you, her thoughts intensify. That mental silence you've created, it becomes a blank canvas for her imagination to paint on. What's he doing? Who is he with? Was he genuinely interested in me, or was it all a game? These questions spiral in her head, and soon, your absence becomes all she can think about. Here's the thing. Women are incredibly intuitive. They pick up on subtleties and patterns in behavior. If you were always available, always replying quickly, always initiating plans, she came to expect that as the norm. By breaking that pattern, you disrupt her expectations, forcing her to reevaluate how she views you. This disruption is where your power lies. It's not about ignoring her forever, it's about showing her what life feels like without your presence. What's most interesting about this strategy is how it influences her perception of your value. Humans have an odd habit of attaching worth to what feels rare or challenging to obtain. When you stop reaching out, you subtly position yourself as someone who isn't dependent on her attention. This independence signals strength, and strength is magnetically attractive. It tells her that your world doesn't revolve around her, and suddenly, she starts wondering if maybe it should. The psychological principle behind this is called reactance. When someone feels that something they once had access to is now restricted or taken away, they instinctively want it more. This is why limited time offers or exclusive memberships are so effective. The scarcity creates a sense of urgency and desire. Ignoring her works in the same way. You're not telling her she can't have your attention. You're simply showing her that it's not guaranteed. But it doesn't stop there. Ignoring her also highlights how much of an emotional pull you actually have. The more she tries to resist thinking about you, the more you dominate her thoughts. It's almost ironic. In your absence, you become even more present in her mind. The conversations you had, the way you made her feel, even the moments she dismissed, they all come flooding back with new significance. And then, something shifts. She starts to feel the weight of the imbalance. If you're not chasing her anymore, does that mean she needs to step up? She begins to realize that the effort to bridge the gap now rests with her. This realization can spark a profound change in her behavior. Whether it's reaching out to you, initiating plans, or even making subtle moves to get your attention, she starts doing the things you once did for her. In many ways, your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting her feelings back at her. If she genuinely cares, your absence will make that clear. If she doesn't, well, then she's done you a favor by revealing it. Either way, you're in a position of clarity and control. By stepping back, you allow her to show her true intentions, free from the noise of your constant pursuit. As time passes and you remain silent, her mind begins to work in overdrive. By now, your absence is no longer just something she notices. It becomes something she feels. And feelings are powerful motivators. The lack of communication starts to stir emotions she may not have even realized were there. Curiosity, frustration, maybe even longing. Ignoring her flips the script entirely, because it's no longer about you wanting her. It's about her wondering if she's losing you. This is where her behavior often starts to shift. At first, she might test the waters by throwing subtle hints, a random like on one of your social media posts, a comment on something unrelated, or even a simple hey in your inbox. These moves might seem small, but they're deliberate. She's testing your response, trying to gauge whether you're still interested or completely disengaged. If you've done this right, she won't just be reaching out because she feels like it. She'll be reaching out because she needs to know. And if you keep holding back, this is when she'll start to worry. Why? Because human nature craves resolution. Think about a time when you left a conversation unresolved or an argument unfinished. That nagging feeling of what if doesn't just fade away, it lingers, building pressure over time. When you ignore her, you leave her in that unresolved space. She's left with unanswered questions, no closure, and the overwhelming feeling that she's no longer in control of the situation. But here's the critical part. This doesn't mean you're ghosting her or playing games. There's a difference between being intentionally unavailable and outright vanishing. The goal here isn't to punish her or create unnecessary drama. It's about showing her without words that you're not a doormat, someone who's just there to cater to her needs while neglecting your own worth. What makes this approach so effective is that it forces her to confront the very things she might have taken for granted. Let's be real. It's easy to get comfortable when someone is always available, always eager to respond, and always chasing. But when that safety net is removed, reality hits. She's faced with the realization that maybe, just maybe, she needs to start putting in effort if she wants to keep you in her life. This shift in dynamic is incredibly powerful because it's rooted in authenticity. You're not ignoring her out of spite. You're doing it because you've recognized the value of your own time and energy. And this recognition, whether she admits it or not, will only make her respect you more. Now, let's talk about what she's likely feeling at this stage. On the surface, she might act indifferent, even unbothered. But deep down, the emotional response is growing stronger. Her mind is racing with questions like, why hasn't he reached out? Is he upset with me? Does he even care anymore? And the longer these questions go unanswered, the more they gnaw at her confidence. This is because, psychologically, people hate losing what they believe they already have. This is also the point where nostalgia starts to play a bigger role. The moments she once brushed off suddenly seem more meaningful. She begins to replay those conversations where you made her laugh, or that one text you sent that genuinely made her feel special. Even things that seemed minor at the time now carry extra weight in her mind. And because you've created this emotional distance, her imagination fills the gaps, often in your favor. You become the person she didn't fully appreciate when she had the chance. But don't let this make you complacent. The key to this strategy isn't about getting her attention, only to revert back to old habits. It's about staying consistent in the energy you're projecting, an energy of self-respect, confidence, and emotional stability. Now, let's explore the final phase of what happens when you ignore her, when she takes action. At this point, after your silence has forced her to confront her emotions and motivations, she'll begin to make moves. The truth is, she won't always wait forever. Her desire for clarity, validation, or emotional connection will eventually push her to act. So, when you're no longer texting her back within minutes, when you're not the first one to make plans anymore, the following becomes inevitable. She's going to reappear in your life, only this time, she'll come with a different energy. Her outreach might come in many forms. But there's one thing you need to keep in mind. It won't be out of the same nonchalant vibe she once had. This time, she's putting herself on the line. Her message might not be as playful or as casual as before. Instead, you'll likely get a more earnest approach. She's trying to reestablish the connection she's now desperately craving. Whether it's in the form of a question like, hey, is everything okay? Or a simple, I haven't heard from you in a while. You can tell something's changed. There's less certainty and more vulnerability in her tone. This shift in her behavior indicates a pivotal moment. She's not merely wondering where you've been, she's realizing she's potentially losing you. It's a humbling position for anyone to be in. We all want to feel desired, to be the one who's sought after, especially in relationships. But when the roles flip, and she's the one wondering if you'll reply, it changes everything. It gives her a taste of what she was once offering you, a reversal of fortunes, so to speak. And here's why this is so powerful. The chase changes. Now, it's not just about her trying to figure out what you're doing. It's about her taking responsibility for bridging the gap you created. This isn't about manipulation, It's about her learning the importance of the effort required in any healthy relationship. You've shown her the consequences of taking you for granted, and as painful as it might be, that's when the true value of your connection starts to become clear. However, while she may reach out, it's essential to remain strong in your stance. Don't fall into the trap of jumping back into the same habits you've broken free from. This is where your true power lies. Not just in ignoring her, but in sustaining that emotional independence over time. If you respond immediately, if you slip back into the old dynamic, all the work you've put in to shift the balance is undone. Take the time to evaluate your response. But above all, remember the lesson you've learned. Ignoring her hasn't been about simply making her chase. It's been about preserving your value and demonstrating that relationships require balance, giving and taking, not just constant giving. By the time she reappears, you'll find that the power dynamic has completely flipped. Where you were once the one wondering if she'd ever reply, you'll now be the one making her work for it. The tables have turned. And the next time she reaches out, you'll have a greater sense of control over the situation. In the end, the beauty of ignoring her isn't in punishing or playing games. It's in showcasing your own self-worth, your time, and the importance of boundaries. You don't have to settle for crumbs of attention or constantly seek her validation. Ignoring her isn't an act of vengeance. It's an affirmation of how much you value your space and your life outside of her. Want to learn even more powerful strategies? Hit subscribe and let's unlock your full potential together.